everyone, my name is Aspen Johnson. I'm your host of The Oldest Study. This is the second episode, and today we are here with two guests today, my classmates and then also teammates on my Certamen team. We'll get a little bit more into focusing on Certamen today. It's a Latin competition and more on that later. But I'm really excited to have you both here, Thomas Pogorelic and Abish Kumar. How are you guys?
Doing well.
All right, perfect. So before we get into a little bit of Certamen, we're going to talk about your journey with the classics and how that kind of began and so forth. So how did that kind of start for you guys?
Yeah, so I would say I think my Latin journey started right when I came to RL in 7th grade, and it started exactly at that Latin 1 class. I actually remember it was first period, first thing in my first ever class at RL, and it was with my Latin 1 teacher, whose name was Mr. Frizzoco, and that was the first time I was ever exposed to Latin. I actually remember that very day in Latin class we translated a passage. It was called Gallia es Provincia, and that was kind of the first time I ever looked at any real Latin.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I remember being in that class with you too, the first period and so forth. And now Tom?
So before I'd come to Roxbury Latin, I never had experience with Latin, but before I kind of had read Percy Jackson and the Rick Riordan novels that are kind of mythological lore, and I think a lot of people have read, so that was kind of a quick introduction. And then I heard of Caesar, Julius Caesar, and so I knew kind of a little bit about the history, but I'm really kind of coming to Roxbury Latin, I got the kind of Latin introduction, and so yeah.
There you go. And so know you guys are like now, of course, like big into like Latin and so forth in the classics, and you do our current Certamen and so forth. Did you, when you first kind of like were like had that first Latin class, or even like that first couple months of like learning Latin, did you guys ever see yourself in like classics and the way that like we are today as like a team and like studying it further? Was that like you said, no, I'm probably just gonna drop it after like Latin 3 or something?
Yeah, I honestly thought that like my first year of Latin, I would have never thought that I would have been on a Latin team like this, studying stuff like mythology, history, culture, that kind of stuff. And I don't think it was kind of like a 3-year and I'll drop it, but it was always something that interested me, but not something that I was, gonna go further on in.
Yeah, I think when I come to Roxbury Latin, I just saw it at first as like, oh yeah, everyone takes Latin, that kind of the requirement. But when I first got into it, was just kind of really intrigued by how much of like a logic puzzle the language was, which was something that interested me a lot, and I liked kind of fitting the pieces together grammatically, which was something that because of how Latin's structured with like the case system, you don't see in other languages that I had been exposed to before. So. Yeah.
I think it was, you told me this or something, it was like Elon Musk, I remember it said like he did Latin for like brain exercise or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was like Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know, it was with someone like, and yeah, I think from a lot of people that talk about Latin, they're into it. It's like the logic aspect of it's very intriguing. So.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And so, no, you guys didn't have any like experiences with the classics before, and then just coming into it fresh. What was it kind of that like hooked you for it? You said that like you didn't think initially that you would be pursuing it as much as you are now, Avish, but like what was that kind of hooked you and said like, oh, this interests me. I want to look at this a little bit more. I like this class.
Yeah, I think especially it kind of started in 8th grade for me when I kind of heard about this whole Certamen team. I know that it was 3 of you at the time, and now it's just 2, but it was 3 of you at the time, and I was kind of just like getting into it, and I think I remember Tom was the one who reached out to me, and he asked me like if I wanted to join a Certamen team, and I could learn a couple of different things, and I could be a kind of asset to the team by learning one of the categories that the team was kind of lacking on, and so that was kind of what hooked me into learning a little bit more about Certamen, and so as a result I got to compete in different competitions as a result of that.
Yeah. And then so obviously classics has allowed you to do Certamen. Quickly before we kind of move on and talk a lot more about that, is there anything else outside of the sphere of Certamen that like you would say classics has kind of like opened you up to or has allowed you to do? It's kind of like there's a lot behind that, but
yeah, I think I was first just kind of the Certamen piece was I just liked the competition of it, and I liked kind of being kind of really involved and kind of on your toes about the different questions.
Yeah.
And at first maybe kind of it was more of like just kind of like, let's just play, but then I think over kind of now 3 years of taking Latin, I think I have had an appreciation for kind of classical cultures that I think often people just kind of throw away because it's like, I mean, the Roman Empire, the kind of Athenian city-states and stuff like that aren't around anymore. That people kind of see it as a dead language, but I think that, and combining all these aspects of mythology and history and language, there's kind of a greater appreciation for all of the influence that it's had on us today.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I guess another thing that I could say is that a part of what I do on the Certamen team is learning about how the Romans lived and kind of what they did on a daily basis. And so kind of what Tom said about comparing that, how the Romans lived back then and what kind of went on back then and how that influences how we live today and how we live today. It's kind of interesting and intriguing about the similarities but also the stark differences between the two lifestyles.
There you go. And so now kind of focusing on a little bit more of Certamen itself, and we'll talk a little bit about what you guys are specifically, your kind of categories within Certamen and so forth. I'll explain to the audience, and you guys kind of help with any details that I miss. So Certamen is, for those listening who've never heard of it, Certamen translates to competition in Latin, right? Was it third declension neuter?
Yep.
I think, yeah. So then Certamen means competition. It's a competition that's hosted by colleges and then statewide and then also national-wide programs, the Junior Classical League. So then you have state Junior Classical Leagues, the Mass JCL, and then the actual national JCL hosts Certamens. So it's a set of essentially getting the understanding of the game. It's like a quiz bowl set of 20 questions. Sometimes it can vary from either 12 or 15 at smaller Certamens, but normally 20 questions, 3 preliminary rounds, and you go into semifinals, and there's normally 3 rounds of semifinals, and then whoever kind of makes it out of there, then you go into the finals. It gets really hype. We have some videos to show you guys of us at finals and so forth, and us competing. And so then each round is, of course, 20 questions. But then the interesting part about Certamen is, in comparison to other kind of quiz bowl or academic competitions, is that there's categories and sections to the questions. So a good 9 to 10 of them are the language, so the actual Latin language, and those can vary from, Tom, how about you detail some of the question types? There's derivatives, and then what else?
Yeah, so there's derivative questions where there'll kind of be a set of English words that are derived from Latin, and it'll ask you which word are all of these derived from, something along those lines. There's vocabulary questions, just straight up vocab. There's sentence translation from both Latin to English and then English to Latin. And then I think there's also usually a passage where the moderator will read twice 4 or 5 sentence passage. Sometimes it's adapted Latin, but sometimes it's kind of real literature. And then it's kind of the player's job to translate that in their heads, kind of think about what it's asking, and then there's a question asked, and so the players have to respond.
Yeah, so you'll see some videos of that, but quite impressive stuff, especially translating in your head, as you mentioned, on the spot, is kind of a big draw and a fun part of Certamen, what makes it Certamen. So then you have another kind of set of 5 questions, are really based on mythology. So you guys think about Greek mythology, Zeus, Hera, Athena, so forth, the whole Greek pantheon, and then their Roman equivalents, and then it gets super specific with a lot of either minor deities, gods, humans, and so forth. Some really interesting stuff. So that's kind of the category that I specialize in, meaning I only kind of study that category and prepare for those set of questions. Tom, of course, does language, and then there's history. Tom also does history too. It takes a really big part of our team, especially as the team leader too. And then Avish works on now we're starting to be also move into literatures as we kind of get more advanced with it. He'll have to answer questions about Latin literature, but right now kind of explain, so you do the culture section, give us a little bit more detail of what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think culture section, and along with that also a geographical type of section, but culture section is kind of just how the Romans lived, familial relationships, and also how they got married, how their names worked in those situations. Another thing could be how they traveled and corresponded with each other, as well as how they entertained themselves with amusements or gladiatorial stuff, or even stuff in the Colosseum or stuff like that. And then I guess also there's military kind of stuff with that, different kinds of coins, different positions that people can have in militaries, and so that kind of sums up what I learned in culture. And then for geography, it's kind of like you think of a map right now and how that map would have looked in like the 600s BC, and that's kind of what I do in geography. Is I learn modern equivalents for cities and states back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. And then so, for both of you guys, and then I'll talk about kind of how I also prepare. You kind of prepare like you study, and then we also have like big study sessions as well, and like weekly stuff to like prep for our like tournaments and so forth. But kind of go into detail like how you guys prepare either on like a daily basis, and then how we like practice together and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think they're kind of very different ways of preparation for the two things that I do for language and history. Language, since we kind of take Latin in school, it's more about being on top of all of kind of the grammar that I'm doing, being quick with sentence translation. But since I practice that a lot in school, it's more just kind of a lot of practice, a lot of being quick on my toes, knowing vocab, kind of practicing in that way. So that's more kind of just really kind of repetition and getting that out there. But that's really different from history, where it's kind of the whole history of Rome from 753 BC to 476. So that's pretty much like more than 1,000 years. So when I really started, I went through all of that history from the monarchy, the republic, and the empire. But then before tournaments, I'll really be revising that, looking over important details that could appear in questions, and really kind of diving back deep into what I've learned before, so that I can remember that, call upon those details for memory, and hopefully that they'll come up in a question, and that'll be worth it. So.
Yeah. Now I have a question though. It's like, for those couple of like days to like a week before, how often does like the stuff that you're studying come up in like the Certamen? Or like how often is that like what you, like is there, or is it like do you have like a draw of information that you kind of pull from over the years of studying?
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago when I really kind of nailed down. I mean, you're talking about history in particular.
Yeah.
When I really kind of got a lot of the history, got the base knowledge, that's kind of really helped me. So I've always had that information to draw upon. But then it's more about going back into the text and going back to really understand little details about kind of a specific historical event. Like for example, something that could come up was in a battle in 275 BC, there was like a general. His name was Dentatus, who was eating like, turnips after the battle, and so that's something like really random. It's pretty cool, honestly, just to kind of like hear these things. But that's something really random that'll come up. But kind of if I can just latch onto that and latch onto like the vegetable, like a turnip, then that'll come up. And details like that have come up, and so it is very useful.
Yeah, for sure. I can also speak from experience with like kind of myth and history are sometimes like similar in how the questions are framed, and it really comes down to like I say is like a good Certamen player knows how to answer the question, but like a great Certamen player knows where the question's already like going before it's already done.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's good. Good saying.
Yeah. I'm glad. I'll also start using that more actually. Now, Avish, how do you kind of get to prepare and so forth?
I would say that when I kind of got into Certamen, I was kind of more like learning terms and their definitions, and it was kind of just like a list of terms and a list of definitions. But I would say more this year and last year, I've been looking at more of the books and the resources, and I've actually been reading through them to, piece together how the terms relate to each other and how I can kind of see relationships between two terms rather than think of them as two different terms. They're actually kind of similar in ways.
Yeah, I think like going off of that, it becomes less of like a memorization game, but like actually like appreciating how things like are tied together instead of just kind of like flat out like going through Quizlet. I'm actually reading and understanding what's like what actually happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of like I think circles, especially at least I can speak for myself within like in mythology, and then I also know some within like history and stuff like that, and it's neat to understand or like broaden your understanding of like classics, and especially how like comprehensive and extensive it is as a study. Kind of bringing it all together is nice. And then so now that we know how you guys prepare, how did kind of like we're gonna lead through our kind of cycle or journey with Certamens. So like Tom, I think we had our first Certamen together, which was like, I think it was Yale, like our 7th grade year.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, from your perspective, how did that go, and like, what were you thinking, and so forth? for it?
Yeah, I mean, we had done practice, right, just with Roxbury Latin every week, kind of just for fun. It wasn't competitive at all, really. And so you were really interested in mythology, and I know you had a lot of prior experience. So me and you and some other friends kind of formed a first team for that experience at Yale, and so we were very much not well versed in what Certamen would be like. So I think we were just kind of like really just thrown into the open as to what was going on. But it was, I don't know, it was a fun experience. It was really like a learning experience, not anything that we were competing for. And we were kind of definitely taken aback by some of the players from kind of some of the powerhouse schools who were a year older as well, who were like really had a lot of knowledge, knew I had experience before. And so that kind of, I mean, getting crushed in some rounds. I don't think we even made it to semifinals, but kind of getting crushed really gave us some motivation to want to pursue this, to kind of put some time to this so we could maybe have the rewards that other teams were having at that first tournament.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I remember that was that first one. I was kind of on the edge about like, do I like Latin or do I want to continue with like Certamen and so forth. And then I remember that tournament, and that was kind of like one of the moments where I could have just easily given up and been like, oh, there's all these other schools that are like so good at it, and we got like crushed our first Certamen. I don't think I'll ever be good at this. And I think there's like a lot of players who kind of get into Certamen like that, who maybe haven't taken as much Latin or don't know like enough mythology because they just haven't been exposed to it. But what I would really like stress is to stick with it, because even like after a couple months, I remember like our team kind of whittled down to like the players that like were really invested in. It was like you and then Teddy, like another teammate of ours at the time, and then I remember we placed at our first Certamen that year, like the BLS high school Certamen.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and then since then it's just been like kind of a upward trajectory. And so if you're on the fence about sticking with it, just keep going for it, because you will get it. And Certamen is definitely an academic like competition that you have to like build up the skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so Avish, now yours was, because you kind of came onto the team a year later, and the first Certamen you ever played in, you won. It was kind of neat. So then, how was that experience?
I think it was very unique. It was also very interesting. You know, I was coming onto a team with 3 other guys who had been playing for about a year now, and who had even learned some stuff in the summer, some like really a lot of stuff in the summer, and so you guys were obviously like really, really good, and I was kind of just like getting into it, and I was just like learning some stuff, and I think that first Certamen was kind of a confidence builder in a way, where I was on a team, and of course I was of course pretty good at the language at the time, and I was learning the culture and stuff, and so it was kind of a tournament where I was learning like to gain some confidence and buzzing in and actually like putting myself out there and trying to answer questions, and so that was probably one of the unique things about that tournament. But I think of course we won that tournament, and it was kind of interesting because I kind of felt all over the place at the time, and I didn't really know much about what was happening, whereas all of you guys were kind of locked in and answering questions and kind of clutching up for us, and you know, I kind of just like felt like I was there, but yeah, it was the first time. So.
All right, so then off of that, we'll kind of go into like memory lane a little bit with we have the video. This was 2021, so this is when Certamen's were on Zoom, and so for the audience, we'll also show you this clip, but just to kind of get your reaction. So this is the last question. You guys will see toss up 20. But I guess before I kind of like roll the clip, I'm wondering, what were you guys thinking like going into the tournament? Were you guys like expecting like that we would make it to the finals and then possibly win, or like, and then also what were you guys thinking throughout like the round, like those 20 or those 19 prior questions?
Yeah, I think as Alvis was mentioning, I had gained a lot of confidence from the summer work that we had done with Mass JCL. So I think I was going in definitely expecting at least to make the semifinals. I think at the Harvard Certamen the year before in the spring, we had like we were in 10th, so we just didn't make the semifinals. So we were kind of steadily improving. So I at least kind of expected that we'd make semifinals, and the older teams from the year before had aged out. But I didn't really think that it would go this far. And it was on Zoom, so we didn't really know what the other competition would look like. But yeah, and then to answer your second question about how kind of we felt throughout the round, I think we were we were like kind of not steadily in the lead, but we were in the lead throughout most of
It was like
of the round.
question close, but we were like.
I think we were always kind of like one step ahead of them, but
Yeah.
I was kind of throughout the whole round nervous that like they would just kind of pull through at the end, and so it was kind of that situation where we were up, but you're just trying to maintain that lead. And yeah, it was against a really strong team from Harrington High School. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then Avish, what was your kind of perspective leading into this?
Yeah, I think I was kind of just like intrigued by the game, like what you guys were all doing. Of course, I was pretty strong at language at the time, and I was, trying to get in, but I was always kind of just like letting it up to Tom at times, just because of like the moment, and it was kind of more like I'm helping out on bonuses and that kind of stuff. But I actually remember from this specific video that there was a toss of 18, and it was one of my categories, and I knew the answer, but once again, I was a good Certamen player, not a great Certamen player, because I knew the answer, but I didn't really know like when I should buzz in, or like when would be the most strategic time to buzz in.
Well, that's especially fair for your first Certamen, but it all worked out well, as you guys will see. So this was toss-up 20, and then so just watch this, and then so
that is 15
you guys hear this,
19, and you
and
can get
then
a
we'll
score
break it
check
down after.
going into the final question.
Yeah, so pending any challenges or anything that may get raised before we go to that final toss-up, after 19 stupefying questions, we have Harrington 2 with 115 points, Roxbury with 130 points, and Boston Latin School with 80 points. Nice playing, everyone.
Great job, everyone. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any other challenges that we should address before moving into the final question.
As long as it pauses.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Toss-up 20. What three-word Latin phrase was uttered after the Battle of Zela by Tom?
Witty witty wiki?
That is correct. By Caesar in allusion to his victory. Witty witty wiki. Bonus 1 for Team S. Which quotation of Juvenal means a sound mind in a sound body?
So pause it like a little quickly right there. So this is kind of comparable to like, I don't know if you guys like know playoff basketball, but like 2019, Kawhi Leonard's like the shot to like end the series between the Raptors and Philly. It was kind of comparable because we were essentially going against one of our rivals, I would say, Harrington High School, where we were at 130 points, they were at 115. And so what that means is each question, essentially, you can gain up to 20 points in total. So how it works is if you get a toss-up, you get 10 points awarded to your team. And then with that toss-up, there's 2 bonus questions that only your team is allowed to answer, whereas like a toss-up question is called like a toss-up because any team can like buzz in to try and answer it. But so Tom, essentially, by getting that last question, you solidified our win, or else the Harrington would have been, or had the chance to win by possibly just a margin of 5 points or 1 bonus question. So it was a really clutch bonus, or not bonus, but toss-up, and you can see kind of like our faces afterwards. I think I did like a lock in with my fists, and Tom was like really excited. You could tell he had the answer too because of how kind of like fast and excited like he said it too. But so now Tom, kind of break down what was going through your head at that moment leading up to the question, and then knowing you had the right answer and then hearing it like kind of validated.
Yeah, I think, so first it was the 3-word quotation, and it was at the Battle of Zela, which is a battle that Caesar won against the son of of General Mithridates, who's from the Middle Eastern area in classics, and so this was kind of a battle that this quotation is like very famous now. I came, I saw, I conquered, but I don't know. I was running through my head. It was kind of under a pressure moment, and so there are a couple of famous quotations from Caesar that he has, and so like there's one like the die is cast when he crosses the Rubicon River, and so there are a couple that were just running through my mind, and so I had heard that beginning when she said C, so I knew it would be Caesar, but it was just kind of really what was it, and it kind of in the notes under that battle in 47 BC. They say this was something that Caesar said after winning the battle, and so kind of in that time that I took, I was really just running through kind of making sure that it was the correct battle that I was kind of drawing the quotation from, and yeah, I mean that's kind of, I said it so fast because they probably would have called time like eventually as well, but it was really kind of just kind of drawing in on my information, focusing on what I had studied, but yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then what about you, kind of Amish, for like when you heard that like she said that is correct? What was going through your head?
I would say it was kind of just an ecstatic moment because it was just like it was pretty insane that we just won a Certamen, and I would say even during that question, because that question is kind of one of the categories that I also specialize in, which is called PMAC, which is like phrases, abbreviations, mottos, and quotations that are kind of famous, and so that was a quotation, and so of course at the time I don't think I buzzed on that question, but there are two quotes that are three words long, and one is Winning with Wiki and one is Alia Jagd Est, which is, so those are the 3-word quotations, and I mean like, Tom got it, which was pretty crazy, and so
yeah, it was a pretty like exhilarating moment, but that's also kind of the part with Certamen too, is like sometimes it's a bit of a gamble into like answering a question, at least for like, I know for mythology, I don't know for like history, but like sometimes it would be like question lead-in could be what like King of Corinth or something like that, and even then it, like when you hear that, you're only like there's so many kings of Corinth that they might ask about, you're like, should I take this chance? And sometimes it can just be between 2 answers, or it can be between like a whole line of kings, but you kind of, as playing Certamen, I've kind of gotten like, oh, I'm pretty sure they'll just ask this. But is that the same for kind of history, you notice, or?
Yeah, there's one really good one, a question that sometimes is asked, I think maybe in the lower divisions, what novus homo from Arpinum? So a novus homo is a man from kind of his familial line who rose up from the ranks, kind of, it was a family not of status, but kind of became the first person to kind of bring status, get a position in the cursus honorum, in the line of positions in Rome. And then so that could be anyone. I mean, there are a ton of people who rose in the ranks. But then from Arpinum, and so there are 2 famous people. There's Cicero, whom I assume many people know of, and then Gaius Marius, who was a consul for 7 years in Rome. And so they both are the exact same. They're novus homo from Arpinum. And so that's always something where you also kind of have to bet on. And so that's kind of, I mean, some players will take a chance on that and just kind of take the 50-50, or you wait for like another clue and then try to buzz in. But yeah, you do have to kind of pick and choose depending, I mean, I think if you're up like 50 points, 70 points, then you go for that. But if it's tight, I mean, that's a decision that players have to make. So yeah, I enjoy that part about it too, the kind of the many different possibilities. And,
yeah.
And,
Read into it. Is that also similar for like, I don't know if it's as similar for like culture or PMAC, or is it maybe with PMAC, right? With
I think maybe with PMAC, because like mottos. Most of the time, the way that people or the writers or Certamen rounds will write a question about PMAC is that they'll pull from many different phrases or mottos, and they'll say, like, what's a common word in most of these? And so I think, like, especially now, like, if I hear the first one, I can kind of take an educated guess about what the word that they're talking about is. And so I guess that might be one of the things that is kind of cool, that if I hear one motto, I know, like, oh, this is like a common word that's found in a lot of mottos, so I can just buzz in right there.
Yeah, there you go. And so, yeah, I guess the kind of like the term for that is almost like hyper buzzing, right? Because that is like where you kind of like buzz in before like when it might be a gamble or something like that. Would you say, let's say you're in that like position and it's like where it could go neck and neck between 2 teams, what type of player are you? Do you kind of like sit back and wait for it a little bit more, or do you like take that chance? As like kind of like what type of player, I guess, are you, would you say?
I think it also depends a lot on the situation. But for example, with a team like that we were playing there, I think I would assume that one of them is at least going to take that chance. And so what I probably would do is maybe kind of wait. So if there's a little lag between what the moderator would say, I would try to like hear maybe right before the next clue, see if there's a word that I can pick up that would give that away. But I mean, it's tough. I think it's a lot about situation. But I think in like the tense moments when it really matters, I do like to kind of go for it and live or die with the decision. I think it's tough to not make that chance and see someone else kind of have a really kind of the winning moment. I'd rather win it, not win it or lose it myself, not be kind of at the hands of another player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. That's the same thing. I remember if there was like a long stretch of time where it was like I always got like 2 in a hyper buzzing, I think, and I was like too fast for a while, and I would be buzzing in on questions where it'd be like maybe only like the first like 3 words of it were said, and it was just kind of, it was like fun to me at the time. But now I think I've learned, especially now, to kind of stay in the pocket is what I've been told again about. But so now that was kind of our first experience winning a college Certamen. And so the Certamens are normally hosted by, there's big ones where you have like Yale, there's normally the beginning of the year, and then normally have through then maybe some smaller local ones that we have in Massachusetts where we are. We normally play like BLS, is Certamen. This year we did like Brookline High School's Certamen. And then after that, in past years we've done Princeton and then Harvard as well. But then after that, and there's also of course states, after all that in the summer, which is, as we speak, we're currently kind of preparing for going out to Georgia this summer for it, is the NJCLs, or the National Junior Classic Leagues Certamen. And so this was from last year where we won our first national Certamen, and these are kind of another tense situation where at the final moment, I think what happened is we had gotten like 5 points taken away from us from like there was some controversy over like a bonus, and then so we were tied and we had to go into tiebreakers and so forth. It was a pretty nail-biting situation, and so play this for you guys and break it down like the last clip.
Okay, Florida has 35 points, Texas 135, Massachusetts 135.
Kind of that same pause in between the moderator, but what are you guys thinking right now in this moment?
Was this before toss-up 20 or after?
This would be toss-up 19, and we're about to go into toss-up 20 now.
Oh yeah, that's a question.
Yeah. It's all coming back. I don't know what the big pause is for though, but
Yeah, I think there
It'll be
was.
a minute or two, so shake out your hands a little bit.
we'll add some technical difficulties.
Samsung Stormwash Plus and Finish Quantum, a powerful clean team.
So then right here, what do you kind of like, what's going through your mind as like you prepare for the last one, and you lean over and we'll discuss a lot like between questions. So what are you kind of saying?
So this was before toss-up 20?
Yeah, before toss-up.
Yeah, so I think we were trying to figure out what question it would be, and we had, I mean, because basically in a round how many, so it'll be like 5 history, 5 myth, 9 language, or whatever kind of the shakeup is. And so by doing those calculations, by gathering up how many questions we had already had about each subject, we knew that it would be a PMAC, which is phrases, mottos, rereads, and quotations, and Oliver, you want to take it from there, which is his subject.
Yeah, no, like I kind of knew in that moment that it was going to be a question like that, and kind of the thing about me is that I kind of only have like 2 to 3 questions per round, and so I'm kind of just waiting for those questions throughout the round, and so after 19 questions, if I haven't like fulfilled those 2 to 3 questions, I know like it's still yet to come, and so I knew like as they were doing that score check that the last question is going to be mine, and so I'm going to have to buzz. So.
Yeah. So what were you thinking in that moment? Was there like some stress, nervousness, or?
I think actually what's happening here is that Tom's telling me to remember the motto of the University of Louisiana.
Oh,
which is
yeah.
where we were. So
Yeah.
we were playing at the University of Louisiana, and what they like to do often is ask that question. I think that's probably a bit too, for like the last question of the round would have been a bit too, I don't know, a bit not complex enough, but nonetheless it would hurt to lose on that. But I think you still knew it, right? So. Yeah.
All right, and so now continue the clip. Make sure I'm in the right place.
Number 20.
All right, here it is.
A form of what Latin word fills in the blank in the following 3 Latin mottos? Ex like tridanes, artes like. Scientia is correct.
Who paused that?
Yeah.
So kind of like what we were talking about the whole like buzzing in when you're not like entirely sure. So that first motto that they said, I know what it was. But then that second motto, I knew it was University of Michigan, and the motto of their college is Artes Scientia Veritas. And so kind of in that moment, I was holding back for the second word to come, but of course he buzzed in because I know Scientia and Veritas are both really common words. They show up in a lot of mottos, so it could have been either one of them. And honestly, if I was going to buzz in there, I would have guessed Veritas. So I don't know,
But it worked out.
but I just ended up not buzzing in.
Yeah. So that was the so we were neck and neck with Texas, who had their own team, and then Florida though, who ended up getting third place, ends up just kind of like snagging that question and making it go into two tiebreakers. We'll get into that. I remember there was like a teacher who had said, I think it was Mr. Howard, said it was like his theory where when it comes down to like 2 teams that are really close, and in like the final question may decide it, it's normally then that third team who gets it, because then the pressure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, and so then I'll speed this up a little bit so then we can get into the tiebreakers. Because then after that, I remember right about. Okay, there we go. So now we're jumping right into the tiebreakers from here, but actually I'll quickly say, I remember that was one of the most like kind of, I think it was like a Certamen round, being up on that stage and then being like surrounded by like people, but then also being there for like sitting down for like 40 minutes. I like to say Certamen rounds are like the perfect level of like stress and like excitement at the same like kind of time. Or stress and boredom, I think, because it's like you're sitting there, but then you're also like on the edge of your seats waiting for that next question. And I just remember like after that kind of like, oh my god, now we gotta go into tiebreakers, and then when I just thought it would be done at least, it was like not revamped. So I remember, at least for me, I was like kind of like super tired at the moment. For you, I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but something like that. And then so now this is starting the first tiebreaker, which is very interesting with detail.
Has to be used at 2:15 by the amazing Mr. George O'Connor. So, there's the question. Thank you, sir. There are no bogey. Yeah, there are just going to be 5 tiebreakers. It's best out of 5. Okay, only toss-ups. You all, no matter what happens, you've already accomplished amazing things. So let's have fun with this, okay? Here comes Mrs. Sonita. Okay, so here we go with the set of 5 tiebreakers. So if you think you can answer, go ahead and ring in. Tiebreaker number 1. Which of the 7 hills of Rome is furthest south? Answer, please. Palatine is not correct. Aventine is correct.
So 1 point is awarded to
Tiebreaker number 2
Texas.
for all players. Change Mulier Parwa to the Mulierum Parvarum is correct because we are asking for the genitive plural. Tiebreaker number 3 for all players. Quid Anglicae significat wold. That is correct for the word woldus. Tiebreaker number 4 for all players. In whose house did Menelaus find help?
Answer, please.
Oh no.
Neoptolemus is not correct. In whose house did Menelaus find Helen on the night that Troy fell?
Now at this moment, I was kind of thinking like that was it, and then there was like they did buzz faster and got like some lucky like kind of aspects of like some questions, and then like even for that question I just like buzzed a little bit early too on kind of like that hyper buzzing, didn't stay as much in the pocket as I could have. But what was going through your kind of like head as they then got the chance to answer that question? You guys thinking like, I thought that was it. I thought we were going home with silver, and it was, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I did think it was probably over at that point, just because it seemed kind of we were down 2-1 and we hadn't gotten that fourth question, so it was probably out of the picture. But they also weren't right behind you on the buzz, which indicated at least that they didn't know it for sure. And so kind of as time went on, there was a bit of hope that like that maybe they didn't know the answer. We'd have one final opportunity.
That's fair. Yeah. What about you, Rich?
I honestly think for those like 2 questions at least, I was kind of still brewing in the fact that I got that first question wrong, and it was kind of funny because I know that Miss Mogel, who was one of our novice coaches, she had told me a couple of days ago to learn the map of the hills and where the hills are, and so I learned it. But another thing was, so I knew it was 2 options, Palatine and Aventine, but I was kind of just unsure in the moment which one of them was for the south, and so I kind of just took a guess there and got it wrong. But
Yeah, it happens, but yeah. And then so we'll continue with then Tom again
Answer,
like
please.
clutches up, and we go into another tiebreaker after.
No, the answer is Deiphobus.
So they get it wrong.
Tiebreaker number 5 for all players. Translate this sentence into Latin. The little boy wanted to go to Pompeii. That is correct. Is that what you said? Okay, audience, we are going to keep on going here. That was 2-2. So we're going to go into our second round of 5 questions. So audience, please, type means information meant to what count. This is the second set of 5.
So but this time we're going to the second set of toss-ups. I'm like, oh my god, how did we even pull through with that? And then I just remember Tom, you answering that last one to tie it, and then I think you have kind of like the same thing for every time you get a question, you're like with a fist up and everything like that. But I remember just going into that, I was like, all right, we could really win this, and then it was kind of like I remember just like a surge of energy. What were you guys kind of thinking? What were you thinking, Tom, as you answered that?
Yeah, I mean, I once again was kind of waiting for like I knew the last word would be to Pompeii, so I kind of to pomp and then just kind of took it. And so there's kind of an interesting grammatical thing there where there's no preposition with the to Pompeii because it's an island. It kind of just goes by itself, and so that was what was running through my mind. Kind of that's what they were testing on, and so just making sure that I had gotten that right. But yeah, it was definitely I couldn't believe that we had tied that up. I really thought that we were down and out, but yeah.
All right, now we'll watch the final tiebreaker, one of the most like hype moments that we've had for Tom.
Okay, so we're restarting the count. This is the second set of 5. Tiebreaker number 1. What English derivative of video means information meant to be helpful? Provisional is not correct. Advice is correct. Okay, audience, please, no exclamations. Thank you. Number 2, tiebreaker number 2. What mythological sisters were turned into a nightingale? Procne and Philomela. Procne and Philomela are correct for a nightingale and a swallow. Tiebreaker number 3. Translate this sentence into Latin. In the 3rd hour, we will read about queens. That is correct.
right, so I was like one of the most invigorating moments of my life. It was pretty crazy.
Your life, wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was like, I mean, when you think about it, it was like, I don't know, you have like moments where it's like, maybe you, like that I feel it's like stress in the moment, and then that kind of that build up to the win where it's like, you, like, it was after such like a long like thing where we'd been working for like, was it 2 to 3 months before studying, preparing, and then really our whole like kind of classical journey before then had like led us to this moment. So it was a lot. But so what was going through you guys' head as one of our teammates, Malvika Diaz, got the first question, and then we kind of started rolling with it? What was going through your head that entire tiebreaker?
I mean, I think first we had the energy of having come back, and I think like in a lot of sports, and I don't know, you can consider this a sport or not, but a lot of sports it's all about kind of like the energy and like who has that rhythm. And so since we had just come back, we were feeling high, feeling kind of ready to get into the second thing, but their minds were probably thinking like we just let that slip. And so we had kind of the advantage, the rhythm, the kind of the speed going into that tiebreak. And so Malvika, got that first question, that got us rolling. And then you had, I mean, you talk about hyper buzzing, but that was like a pretty quick buzz, but a strong one with that nightingale that gave that away. And then I think for me, for the last question, I knew we were 2-0 up, and so it would have been kind of hard for us to really lose that. I felt like we kind of had it, so I kind of took a chance at that and guessed that it would be Kings at the end, so it worked out. But
Yeah. I think all of those were like buzzes right even like way before the question would like start to end. Even with yours, where you didn't even let the sentence for the translation finish, and you like were on the money for where you like kind of predicted the sentence was actually going. And then I remember that was like pretty vividly from like, I don't remember much now, it was pretty like a while ago, but I remember kind of being in that moment, like I had my head tilted to the side, was like listening to you, and then I was just kind of waiting for her to say like, that is correct or like incorrect, and then I remember hearing her say that, and just like this like pure excitement jumped up, and we all kind of came together as a team. And then in true sportsmanship fashion though, then we went right to them, we like shook our hands, and they're a great competitor too, and it was over a great round. But then Avish, what about you? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think something kind of interesting that I was kind of just watching right now was that they kind of say in Certamen that when someone's doing something or answering a type of question, you're not allowed to look at them or like do anything of that sort. Otherwise, it's like considered consulting or something like that, and you can get like disqualified from that question. And so the whole time I was just kind of looking down, trying to translate this sentence in my mind, just like listening to what Tom was saying. And so I think that was just kind of cool. Just watching that.
No, definitely fun moment and so forth. And then right after, what were you guys' like thoughts and emotions? Like, I couldn't believe that was real for a second. I was just like, I thought I was dreaming for a quick minute. What were you guys like thinking?
yeah, I mean, for me, I felt like it was like just kind of pure joy. Like you were saying, I mean, really just happy with all the work that we had done. And I think I was most excited. I mean, I think we had like beignets after we were in Louisiana, so it was very appropriate. But I was also just excited because we had won, so that was pure joy. I could just kind of relax, and I had been really nervous kind of leading up. We only played 1 round per day, so it was every day. You're really trying to focus to bring your best game, and so you're going after 5 days. This was it, and so I was nervous for it. The night before, I was kind of thinking about how it would go, and so we had done it. And then I was also excited kind of just to watch the next 2 rounds to see the intermediate advance, because I mean, I like the game of Catan. I like to just watch it. I like playing, but I also like kind of seeing other people answer questions that would have been more difficult just because of the thing. So I was excited to be able to watch 2 full rounds of the finals Certamen ahead too. So
People who don't know, Certamen is like based into levels of like your first 1 to 2 years of like classical experience. You're in the novice division, and then after that is intermediate. We're now intermediates, and then you go into the advanced division, which is your last like couple years of high school essentially. It depends on if you start in high school or middle school, but the same kind of breakdowns. And so then kind of wrapping up on like our in general, and then also like about the Certamen experience. What's different about like nationals, I would say, is right off the bat, college Certamens, they're only for a day, and So you have like 3 preliminary rounds in the morning, and then you have your finals round in the evening and so forth. And it's just like very quick, and you just kind of go home. Win or lose, it's just like it doesn't stay with you as much. But then going to nationals was our first time experiencing like a week-long dragged out version of just a round a day, and the rounds to me felt a lot longer too, because they were taken with a little bit more kind of pace and care. But so what was that experience like, being there that week, knowing we had this ahead of us and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, it was like we were saying, kind of you have your activities throughout the day, and then at night, these were at night, you'd have that one round, 30 minutes. And so, yeah, I mean, it was definitely nerve-wracking, because that was kind of the only thing that day, and in order like to redeem yourself, you'd have to wait a whole another day if you didn't play well. And so you want to bring your A game, but you can't really build up a rhythm because it's every day, it's choppy, the game. And so I remember specifically that second round, which we had actually played against Texas, who would end up facing the finals in that tiebreaker. I played kind of pretty badly, and so I was kind of really upset at that, and then I had to wait a whole another day to have another opportunity, and so kind of my confidence was really down, just I was out of the rhythm, but I slowly was able to build that back up through the course of the tournament. But I think having that experience will help me a lot and help us as a team a lot this year, and knowing how to manage over the course of 5 days, kind of how to keep your game steady.
No, very much so. I think I had the same experience where it was like my first round, like the nerves just got to me. I was like hyper buzzing. It was just forgetting information like on my first round, which is like one of my worst rounds. But then I had to wait, because then for round 2, which was then like Tuesday or Wednesday, wasn't playing in that one, and then we came back then a day later after that, and I remember going into that one with the nervousness of like, all right, I gotta redeem myself, and then ended up having like a really good round. And so I think definitely that perspective of knowing there's going to be those ups and downs, but you just got to roll with it, and it's like, you know, it's going to turn out well. Then, so what about for you, Abish, that whole like kind of week-long process, what was that like to you?
Yeah, I think kind of like what both of you said, that we kind of had that round 2, and that was kind of like a poor round where we didn't really play that well, and we kind of got beaten up by that Texas team. And so the next day there was round 3, and I didn't play in that round, and so it's kind of just like marinating in that, and also just like making sure that you're ready for the semifinals, because I knew that I was going to play in that round, and so kind of just like learning some stuff, getting ready in the practice sessions that we had, because I know that although there was a lot of activities going on, the kind of 3 of us were mainly doing a lot of Certamen, and so during those days, although there was activities happening, we were mainly finding rooms to practice Certamen with our coach, and so it was kind of just like a bunch of Certamen, kind of like making sure that you know doing your stuff.
Yeah, it was I guess kind of the same thing where it was like, for me it was like, yeah, making sure you know your stuff, rolling with it, but the same thing for like already Certamen round, I felt was like that like combination of like boredom and then like stress, but then also excitement, which just like prolonged over a week, was like, I remember I like first doing it was like, it was so much, but then I think now having done it before and knowing how it's kind of going to work a little bit better, I feel super prepared for it. But yeah, so now one last quick question to, if you guys have any advice that you would like to give to younger classicists or younger Certamen players who are interested in Certamen, maybe still just new to it, haven't really like had the chance to do well, what advice do you guys have?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, like kind of really get into it, and at its core level, it was just kind of for me, just kind of having fun with it and playing and competing, just kind of in Roxbury and kind of activities, and so I just kind of enjoyed it at its core. So I think really like if you have fun with it, if you like it, and then take it deeper, because we over the span of 2 years kind of went from like just learning Latin to like actually really diving deep in. So I think kind of if you start with that passion, then kind of it'll carry you a long way to want to learn more, to be inspired by the better players.
All right, perfect. And then, obviously, you have anything to say? Or if not,
yeah, I would say, going after it, actually being driven by what you're doing and not just doing it passively or for fun. And I think kind of also enjoying what you're doing. It shouldn't be like something that you have to do, something that it can also be just be something that you like doing because it's productive and it kind of gives you some purpose. Especially in these summer months where you're kind of just like hanging around. It can be more fun to just do something productive like you're talking.
Exactly. All right, thank you, everyone. This has been the second episode of The Oldest Studying. Thank you to my guest, Tom Pogrelli, Avish Kumar. I'm looking forward to Nats this summer. Yeah, thank you guys.